I'm gonna start in the 90s, 1990. The movie is Class of 1999.
Oh boy, I was a graduate of the class of 1999.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I was especially looking forward to
Yeah,
this.
that's last century.
It is.
It's appropriately 99 minutes. It's directed by Mark L. Lester. He directed the 1984 version of Firestarter. He directed Commando.
He directed Commando?
He directed Commando. And a 1979 movie that I've never seen but immediately went on my watch list. It's called Roller Boogie. This is ostensibly a follow-up to 1982's Class of 1984.
Directed by the same guy?
Directed by the same guy, but it's not really a direct sequel. I don't believe that one has any sci-fi or robot elements. I think it's just about like a rough high school. Here's the back of the box to Class of 99. 3 ex-military robots are reprogrammed as teachers and secretly placed in a school where most students are part of organized gangs. They begin to respond violently to unruly students, and their military training starts to take over. Tagline: the ultimate teaching machine, out of control.
Wow.
This movie is operating under a ridiculous premise.
Yeah.
The schools in this world are at the center of the crime world, essentially in cartel zones that surround these schools. This was at a time when schools are becoming a little bit more violent. But for some reason, the people in this world don't see a need to move the schools from where they are. They're going to keep them right there.
Right, like smack dab in the middle.
Yeah, and parents are apparently sending their kids into these zones to go to a shitty school where they might get hurt, and they're definitely not going to get educated.
Right.
Here's some stats for you that are in the movie. At this school, there are 3,287 students, 2,210 of which are gang members. That's 67% of the population.
Okay.
Violent incidents in this school happen every 2 hours and 38 seconds, which, based on what we see in the text of this movie, seems like they're being underreported because it seems like they're happening every 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah. Well, again, as a graduate of this class, I can say that this feels a lot like a documentary.
Yes, the late 90s were really rough.
Oh, yeah.
At some of these schools. A lot of scenes have random gunfire and explosions in the background, just as a world building exercise. I think they're like definitely comedy beats as well.
Yes, for sure.
The people in this world, though, are so hard to maintain like some sort of like illusion of a normal school experience in the middle of this hellscape. Yeah. But it left me wondering, like, what must the world be like outside of these free fire zones?
Right.
Like, we see a little bit of it, but not really.
Right.
We don't really know what like the average suburban experience is.
Yeah. There's maybe one scene where it feels like, oh, this is just modern day San Francisco, which isn't without its problems. But
yes, this is definitely trying very hard to be a Verhoeven level parody.
Oh yeah,
it's not quite that. It rips off pretty much everything in its path: RoboCop, Repo Man, Terminator.
Oh yeah,
everything John Carpenter had done up to this point. It's a little bit more of a black comedy to me than a hard parody. It's maybe just a little bit too silly to be like a Verhoeven style movie. But I am a huge fan of trashy movies with preposterous premises.
Right.
And this movie is very extra in every way.
It's kind of balls to the wall.
Yeah, it's like a lot of B movie fare. It's not very subtle. Stacy Keach's hair and eyeballs in this movie are just like out of control. They're just wild choices. There's a lot of like fairly bloody violence in this movie, which is cool. There's a robot decapitation, which they managed to make kind of gory.
Oh, quite. Yeah.
Bradley Gregg, he's the lead in this movie. He's playing this part like completely straight.
He is, and that's impressive for essentially an off-brand Corey Feldman.
Yeah. And everybody else in this movie is like pure caricature.
Yeah.
But he's playing it straight. But I actually think that's what this movie needs from him, and I think he does a good job at it. It really it's good for the part. But what really pushes this movie over the top for me is that there are so many great explosions.
There are no shortage of explosions.
Yeah, especially in the second half, including one where they blow up the school. It's not as good as like Rock and Roll High School, but it's in the same vein. And then, of course, we get to the robo teachers, who I submit are not suited to be teachers.
No, not at all.
They immediately get violent with these students.
Yeah.
Like,
In some interesting ways.
yes, and like at the drop of a hat.
Right.
Pam Grier is one of these robo teachers, and her first interaction with students includes her beating the shit out of 3 or 4 students.
Right.
And all the scientists in the back that are watching this, researchers, whatever they are, regional managers for the military industrial complex, they're all watching this on monitors, and they start breaking out into applause when the teacher beats the shit out of a handful of students. And they're like, this is perfect.
Yeah. She is operating as planned.
Yes, like, this is great. They have the option to not react violently.
Yeah.
The option is there from the viewpoint of the robots. Educate is an option, and discipline is an option. Educate is never chosen, not once.
No.
They never take that option. So we don't know that educate doesn't also include violence. It might.
Right.
But of course, the robo teachers very quickly move on to murdering students in the school, supposedly in self-defense. They kill multiple students on, I believe, the second day that they're there. Mm-hmm. Stacy Keach is thrilled at that,
And not even in a really discreet way. Like it's in the halls or like in a gym, and it's just like, that's what happened to this kid who misbehaved.
Yes, and the one kid had a gun, and even though it was pretty obvious that he didn't have to be murdered by his teacher, he did come at his teacher with a gun. So like, okay, that happens. The other kid was like, the threat was manufactured.
Yeah, he was just high.
He was just high, and the teacher was shoving drugs down this kid's throat. So like, I don't know. They're just looking to kill kids for any reason.
Yeah.
Then they just go into like full on commando mode, and they're like traveling the streets at night, like trying to start shit, looking for excuses to kill students.
Yeah.
It's kind of unclear what the role is besides just like pick out a group of students that needs to go and just murder them, I guess.
Yeah, it had me wondering what did the company who created these robots hope to achieve? Because it seems like they knew all along this is what these robots are going to do. And the plan, at least as I understood it, was let's do a pilot program in this one school. It's going to go off without a hitch, and then we're going to put these military robots in all the schools. But with all this murder.
Yeah, they went a little bit too far. But I think what happened is these robo teachers are really just a result of the military industrial educational complex in the movie. I think it's even in the movie, it's the Department of Defense and Education.
Yeah.
And like anything else, this technology was developed for military purposes, and they use it as much as they can. But they're like, well, we could sell way more robots if we can shove these things into schools.
Yeah.
And so they're like, cool, we'll figure out like a civilian application for this thing. And who cares if it results in some students dying? These schools are rough anyway. They probably need it.
Yeah.
So that's how these people think.